Yeah, all right, we're gonna go ahead and call the 76 Entertainment Community Improvement District meeting for March 12th, 2026 to order. Billy, can you prepare for us, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for City of Branson. Thank you for just to be able to come and serve in this capacity. As the beginning of the season and our spring break is here, we're excited. Pray that we have a very successful season. We ask for safety. We ask that, especially as we celebrate 250 years of America, we pray for all the logistic, all the planning, all the people are involved in making this happen. That things be a great season this year, Father. We ask, Father, for your guidance and your safety of them. As we move forward with the CID this afternoon, we ask that you be with us in our thought, and we ask, Father, that you educate us and give us wisdom and direction as we move forward. I pray that the things that we do may be pleasing to you. Thank you for everybody that is serving in so many capacity, from the mayor to Kathy, Alex, and everybody that is on the board and all the staff. We just thank you that they're so patient and they're willing to serve you in this capacity. Thank you for all that you do. And I pray all this in your wonderful name. Amen.
Thanks, Bill. Please do a roll call, please.
Sure. So we obviously have Billy and Chuck. Is Mike there? Mike? Can you guys hear me?
Can you hear us, Paul?
I heard you, Cheryl. Is Mike there?
I hear you. Hey, Solon, can you speak?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you guys, I think your audio keeps cutting out from me and Paul. I've been able to hear Paul.
Hello.
Hey, Solon, try again.
Yeah,
Can
I
you hear
heard
me now?
you.
Okay, Paul, I think they can hear you now.
Great. Thank you. Mike, are you there?
Sure.
Brian? I see.
I'm here.
Kathy is down there. Alex? And is the mayor present?
Yes, he is.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to approval minutes for the September 24th and the October 29th, 5 minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes of meetings? Questions, comments, concern? Very done. I'll entertain a motion to approve both the September 24th and the October 29th, 2025 minutes.
I mean, a motion to approve.
Thanks, Billy. I'll second. Second, Brian. Any further discussion? All those in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. Move on to the review of the CID financials.
So Cheryl sent out financials from October until February. I'm gonna go ahead and start with December because we do roll up financials at the end of the year. And if you have questions about the previous financials, go ahead and ask them. So we came in at $7,996,387 in revenue for the year, with $5 million of that being sales tax revenue. Sales tax revenue was up 3.5% over 2024. And then we go down to our expenditures. We expended $1,843,565 in expenditures for our year of 2025, with the majority of that being our utility agreements to get moving forward. Are there any questions about our December financials or our 2025 financials before I move on to 2026?
You have a sense of why the tax on the sales tax on this increased by 3%, and our tourism tax increased by 11%.
I don't, and it's just about the tax rates and who's remitting those types of taxes, because tourism tax is broken down by different types and activities, and this is just sales tax. So it's one activity, not multiple activities. So we have some businesses that remit types of tourism tax, so then they're paying higher taxes. So that's partial of it, but other than that, it's just the different types of taxes in here as well.
Okay. It would also be based on jurisdiction.
It is also based on jurisdiction, and that's one thing we've seen from the state lately, and we're kind of keeping a better track of it. It's also based on when businesses submit them to the state and the state's remitting to us. We've seen a few variances in when we're getting them from the state, and like we have some businesses on there that like are one off, and that's just when the state's getting. So some of the remittances that we're getting from the state are like, well, why didn't we receive these 5 businesses, right? Because that makes a huge impact of when we're receiving those funds. So we're trying to do a better job of keeping track of that, so we can say, hey, state, like, why are we behind on some of this? I'm not blaming it all on them. We all have important things when we're getting the money. So we're kind of keeping track of that and say, okay, this should have really been claimed in January. Why are we just not paying in March? Or because it was 2 months, you know, it was like actually 2025 from the business when they remitted it, and it was just delayed. So we're trying to keep track of that so we can have a consistent revenue source so you guys know how busy you actually were. Then again, sales tax is still 2 months behind regardless from when we get it. We want to do a better job of being like, hey, here's where's our actual busy times, right? So you guys can see all that. So we're going to try to get you those numbers in the next few financials in the next coming months.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move on to 2026. So once again, into February, not running over January. So for the year so far, we've brought in $1,091,102 in revenue, with $1,079,000 being taxes, and then the other $11,000 being interest on the taxes. And then this is down 2.9% over 2025. Once again, that's just when we're getting it from the state and those remittances. You always kind of see those variances at the beginning of the year when we're getting those remittances from the state. There's sometimes a delay with year end if when people are filing their sales tax. But if you look at prior years, that's really not that bad. And then I do want to touch back on 2025. We also saw a 16% increase in interest income revenue. I know you guys have more saving in your accounts, so you'd expect that to happen. But wanted to bring that up that we're doing pretty good on interest income, which is unallocated revenue. Are there any questions about the financials in front of you today?
How are we compared to 20?
Overall,
No, through February. You said 25, we're down 2.5%.
so our 2026 over 2025, you're down 2.5%. I don't have the exact calculation, but I can email that out to everyone to say exactly what we're down for 2024 on that percent. But like we can see over 2025, like in January, we had a decrease of 10%, then it went up 16%. And that's just how we're getting those remittances. So it's kind of varying in those years, but I can go back and do 2026 overall the prior years so we can see all of that. Another thing that I can do going forward is move these back to when the business has actually collected it to give you guys a graph along with the traffic count that we do. That will be a really good report for you guys to have to say, here's the traffic in your area, and then here's how that's comparable to the sales in your area. So we can do that going forward to get it up to date. So, are there any other questions?
Do they have any other questions regarding financials? No, thank you very much, Ellis. All right, moving on. I put this on the agenda, not knowing what everybody's thought process would be on it. So for discussion, we were supposed to elect officers back in November or December. But we've been working in the background and did not have any meetings November, December, January, or February. So I have election of officers on here, but I also know that, for example, Brian and I are both up for reappointment. So I do not know if we're going to move forward with the election of officers or postpone it until April. So I just like to get kind of a consensus of that.
So our next meeting, we won't have the end of the month March, so this is on the end of March, we'll have one April.
We will have the end of the month, March, but
But we won't have the appointment by then.
the appointment, I believe, March 24th is what I remember hearing. Or not, I have to look on the 24th. I know I've resubmitted to be on. I don't know if Brian did. Yes, but Brian and I have. And of course, that's at the discretion of the mayor and his decisions. So it's kind of, do we
I say we do let's do the elections.
go ahead and do the appointments?
Appointments, yeah.
Okay. All right. Then let's go ahead and move forward with appointments. We'll start with chair, then go vice chair, then treasurer, then secretary, or we can do it as a group if there's no issues or qualms of continuing as it is.
I make a motion to keep the current positions the way they are.
I'll second that.
Second by the mayor. Any further discussion? Anybody want to take my chair position? Just kidding. Hearing none, all those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Set them off the table. Get my screen back here. Billy does a great job. Emails to approve invoices. He is very timely. All right, so let's move on to the cooperative agreement update.
Solon?
Yes, hi. So we basically have been able to work out, I think, and Chuck, if and Paul and anyone else that has comments, please chime in. I think we've worked out everything and come to agreements on everything, all the terms of the cooperative agreement, except for maybe perhaps the city's the contribution to the city's expenses for the maintenance that's going to be increased due to the new beautification that's going to happen. And so the city has been trying to work through numbers, and of course we're trying to project out what our expenses are going to be with these new additions to make this 76 project really nice looking. And of course, as with anything that you construct, you want to plan for maintenance so you don't just build it and then it deteriorates to garbage as the years go by. So this is long-term planning and vision going on. And so I think after we've looked at the financials, the number that we were able to come to was rather a percentage, because this is going to be something that's going to be going out for years, right? And so you talk about inflation and stuff like that. If we did an actual dollar number, that would fall behind in subsequent years, and would not be able to continue to maintain the property well. So to track with inflation, in a simplified way, we just decided that we would propose a percentage to you guys as the CID's contribution to subsidize and help the city make sure that this stays an improvement, right? A community improvement district. So that's where we were coming in at, and the reasons for that. So the percentage that we had was 12%. I think Michael could probably break down where that money would be going. But as we looked at the projections for the revenue going forward for the CID, I think that you can handle 12% and still bond and fund the rest of this project. You just have to, look at how the numbers are crunched and, go from there. And that's the update we have.
Michael, do you want to elaborate on some of the things that we've been crunching?
Yeah, so the original agreement, of course, had all the things that were in there from, just to remind everybody of the maintenance that'll be for the future, from striping the crack sealing, the storm snow removal, to taking care of the trees, replacing the benches, replacing the lights, the controllers, signals, goes on and on. So what we, and of course, your biggest asset there is your full-time employees that are there. Right now, we're sitting with two. As you know, we tried to save quite a bit of money by not building a building to store them in, and we acquired the TCAD building, which was a trade for city property. So the city was definitely investing in a building where we could have maintenance that made sense, right? And somewhere for them to land. With that, there'll be maintenance to that building and maintenance of trucks and trimmers and blowers and all those good things. And we forget sometimes how much things really cost. We always spruce up mulch right before the opening of the season that we had a great prayer about. We have a great season, and just in mulch is $1,000 mulch. That's not people's time or anything. That's raw material cost. And so when you're looking at 0.3 miles of it, and eventually this thing's it's going to expand, and exponentially it's going to expand as you add set segments on, and we're super excited about segment 1 and 2, and that'll also help push out the striping and some of that stuff out a little bit in the overlay. But in segment 3, when we redid it with at the time, you guys didn't overlay it, but the hope is to overlay it. Those crosswalks cost real money and hawk systems with electrical usage and electrical usage there. So those are all the things that we took into consideration and definitely support how the board can help pay for what your investment is today, your assets that are in your community. You know, what Matt and I just spent 2 days up in St. Louis and looking at all the Missouri Division of Engineers and talking about the assets that are across the state. You have to maintain the assets that you have, as you all know, as you run big businesses. So appreciate your support. Happy to fill in any questions about
Some of the spreadsheets. Some of that stuff.
Yes. Paul, can you let me share?
Sure.
Yeah.
Did that work, Cheryl?
Yes, sir. Can everybody see that spreadsheet? Make it a little bigger. Yes, ma'am, I do. That's actually my box.
That's perfect.
That's good, Cheryl. Okay, Allison, you want to walk us through some of these, please?
Yeah, so this is the proposed for 2026. We kind of looked back and revamped it. So like Michael said, we have 3 full-time maintenance workers that will be down there. Then we have maintenance cost of 400,000 for striping, sewer maintenance, chemicals. We have the irrigation bill. We have some of those in lodging for snow removal and different things like that. Not that that would be expended, but those are real costs the city incurs annually. Their clothing expense to clothe those employees down there. To keep them safe. We have damages to streetlights and poles and all of those things that will be installed because if it gets damaged or anything, you want your new stuff replaced and you don't want it to look bad right after you get it brand new. Just some supplies, some maintenance supplies down there. The generalized cost, tools, safety supplies, chemicals, and then just the regular costs that you've had before are the following 4 lines that you've incurred annually in previous years. And if we scroll down and then there's your capital a little bit under that, and that's what we project for our 2026 budget. So 12% would help fund some of this, but not quite all of it. But it would definitely help the city keep and maintain that area. Are there any questions about the expenditures that are listed?
If you scroll up just a little bit, Cheryl, you know, a reminder that those agreements, you know, for the TAPs are already in place along with the governor's agreement. And it's important that MoDOT has asked me to remind everybody that agreement we've already drawn on. We drew for the services of your engineering plans, and that money's back to you. The fiscal year for them is coming up, and we'll have to give some type of explanation by April/May of where we are and if we're out to bid. And the governor could reconsider those funds that they remind me of every year. It's reoccurring, although we're already drawn. So that's a monthly meeting with MoDOT. They also asked about the 2 TAPs that are in there. Those are matches that are there, not to steal the thunder of the financials that are there, but they're matches for the money that we're getting.
Michael, line 12, consulting. Explain that.
I'll let Allison.
Yeah, so that's our
take that one.
current consulting cost for Paul. And different things or not just Paul, because that's the bottom line. Sorry, we did split that up this year. Yeah, I was like, wait, split that out. I remember that conversation. So consulting, that's our engineering consulting on forward, so we can move on to our next phases. So that's why we had put 315,000 in there for 2026. And then if you go to the next years, when we do our forecast, we've continued that cost because if we don't pay for consulting, then all the next phases stop, right? So we went ahead and included that so we can move on to those next phases.
I want to assure everybody, we've had numerous internal meetings about this and really put our heads together on, you know, what's the right approach here and how do we make sure that years from now, the city has the revenue to, like you heard in the opening comments, to keep things beautified and not let it deteriorate is really important to us. It's such a significant investment on the part of the city and the city for this project. And so we really, really not just crunch numbers, but smash numbers together to come up with what we believe is a very fair proposal where the city's got skin in the game, the city has skin in the game, and we think it's a really good balance.
Michael, maybe I just. This consulting 315, the way you explained it. I just. Maybe you can explain a little bit better in terms of how is that, that's the bulk of it's 315, and how is that different than what we're doing? Who are they paid to? What kind of work are there? Like, I know you're saying if you don't do the planning for next year, and then you don't have, but what are they doing? Is that part of what? It's not.
Allison baked this number or put the pieces.
That's a
together,
GRE stuff,
so.
I mean, GR.
Yeah. I mean, like, for instance, like you have ongoing, even though you slow down, you have ongoing costs with Great River Engineering, right? They're at the end of the money that was there. But they're still doing final touches, or, they have to reseal the plans, or something adjusts, or a business adjusts, all the way down to the end. And so we're sitting right at that timeline. We still have to build the contract documents. Like they're sitting there, but are we releasing it next month, next week? Is it 365 days? Is it not? And those are there. Great River Engineering promised us that, that just so you know, we were up in St. Louis the last 2 days, and Great River Engineering got their own thing presented, right? And people had questions about the gondola way in the past. I mean, people that are interested in the community down here and what we're doing for transportation are there, and they put together a presentation that highlights, Branson. We had 170 people in our room, and we started out with how many people have been to Branson, not because of this conference, because the conference does come here, it goes throughout the state, every single hand up, and that's impressive, and we want to keep that. And so she worked together the fees that you guys have had in the past and things that Allison and staff think that are going forward. I worked the top part of that, so.
Yeah, and those are the fees that you've had in the past, so it wasn't just that we're throwing that 350,000 in there as a new cost for 2026, that has been in previous years as well, the last 5-year forecast, so.
So they're like. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Billy, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to add one thing, is I don't believe, and Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe things like, our insurance premiums that will cover, slip and falls on these new streetscape improvements, which we have them all the time. And, when we have to turn those into insurance, the city bears the cost of our premiums going up. It doesn't cover things like my time when I'm dealing with those cases. I literally had to spend time today on a slip and fall. And so there's a lot of hidden costs that we really aren't, for the city increasing these things that we're really not actually accounting for here. So I hope that, if you start getting tempted to nitpick these things, appreciate that we didn't actually add everything we could have, and we weren't really getting super nitpicky, just really looking at the basics of, okay, we're going to have 2 bodies there. Well, the reality is someone has to manage those bodies. Someone has to hire and fire those bodies. So, you got all that kind of stuff that's built into those things as well, but that we're not really representing here in numbers.
I don't think I was nitpicking. I was just trying to figure out one part of it. Like, I know we have a contract with Great River to design phase 1. I mean,
Right.
Section 1, Section 2.
I mean, there's other stuff like your
Yeah.
website.
Yeah.
That's, it's not drilled that she went back to your.
So those are like,
And you sign off on all those things, right?
So that's something like.
This isn't a design contract
Yeah.
of a couple $1 million for the plans for segment 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. That's not what that is. It's allocating enough money for you all to pay your bills.
So that's what you're seeing there. It's kind of like your normal annual expense.
Cost to run business.
To run business that you'll have consulting for an annual 300. That's what I'm trying to say. Because we pay Great River on a different contract, but we do have about $315,000
Outside of that.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Where is it? So that's and because I know that I understand we're over a lot of the stuff like Red River, and then there's stuff that the lake has done. They took us to do all this CID
it's been,
Right,
You
and
did-
like Great River was, roughly $2 million, right? And that money's gone, and they're no longer allowed to draw on that. The other things, yeah, you have your contract, like you have your you have your lawyer's costs broke out there, but the rest of the costs that you do in your business is not really showing at that level. Sure, Allison would be happy, I'm not speaking for you.
Yeah.
So break it down if you want.
I
No,
feel that
no,
right
no.
now, that's just what we budgeted in previous years, and I will tell you, you haven't always met that 315, right? But we also wanna have it there in case you wanna do anything, because if we don't have the money there, you can't enter into those increments, you can't do those things, and you can't get that consulting cost without an engineer, like, without going and getting a whole contract. So that's why we put that 315 there, that doesn't mean you have to expend it. And then the 2% of revenue, that's in your current cooperative agreement, and then obviously your legal fees are there, that's broken out, that's a single line, and insurance, those are things you currently pay on the current cooperative agreement, those bottom 4 lines.
Well, like easement, right? We went out and got an easement company pretty easily and we brought it to you and that came out of that line, right? So-
yeah. Can you go out a little bit, I have a question, can we kind of go through the methodology of kind of what the city proposing, because I think it's important to look at what are the costs per year moving up to 2030 or so, and the expected maintenance costs beyond just, what a full-time worker. There's a lot of thought that got put into that. So,
Which tab are you on?
well, I guess we could start with 2026, 2027.
This one?
Yeah. And so I think it's helpful, and Allison, I don't know if you want to talk about this, I think the percentage of growth that we were expecting for the CIP was around 3%.
Yeah.
Which is very conservative, that's normally what our city budget is, right around that amount. What are we currently, what's growth year to date again?
So right now, we're at 3.5%. For these projections, I actually did 2% to keep it really conservative based on bond revenue and everything else. We want to keep it conservative to say, hey, most likely you're going to bring more than we're projecting in revenue. I don't want to over project your revenue and say, here's all your expenditures, so you're going to cover it. So we did do a bit, we moved it down to 2% to say, on average, you make way more than 2% in sales tax revenue. And then interest income is remained flat, right? So you've made more than 325,000 in the last 3 years. But I'm not gonna go put 500,000 in there and then you guys don't meet that expectation, right? I don't wanna overshoot our revenue. So we were really conservative when it came to revenue. So 2% kept interest flat, and then we have all of our expenditures per year. So right within as things go out, like Alex said, if we looked at projections, we have different costs per year. We go from 3 full-time positions, 2027 remains at 3 full-time positions. Then you have your 4 costs you've always had in your current co-op agreement. But then we keep in the striping and all of that goes with those phases and maintaining that strip, right? So 446,000 there. And then your capital, right? The capital is costs you would have had anyway, and then we added bill and overlay for 2027 to maintain that whole road. And that's what we have projected and the equipment that we've projected there for 2027.
And Michael, can you just talk about just what it takes to maintain this stretch of 76? I mean, segment 3, we've got some good data on. Segments 1 and 2, we're going to have in place, right? But this is part of the conversation we're having. Now, what does it actually cost to maintain? And what is the actual, in a good faith way, what should the CID pay and what should the city pay? And so we're blessed to have the CID, right, that brings in $5 million a year to be bonded out towards beautifying 76, which is the heartblood of the whole tourism industry here, right? And so that's fantastic. That we can project out pretty easily. And I know there's obviously on this board a very strong notion to continue keeping design, right, going as fast as we can down the design path, so we get to the end. Because 5 and 6 are still paying a sales tax, right? So we understand and understand that we need to get to the end, right? Not by 2060, sooner, right? So how do you do that in the most aggressive way possible, modeling it conservative, but yet still finding a percentage and having the city catch up on maintenance services? And that's really the conversation that Chuck and Paul and Paul Campo and our team have been having the last couple months, is how can we leverage the awesome revenues that are committed from the city to continue to build it forward in how many years, right, for each segment. But then what is the fair part of it that the city should pay, right? It's like a blessing and a curse to be able to bond out a $30 million project, because you can build that project, but you can't the next day just go, okay, well, that's someone else's problem. I'm going to go on to the next segment, right? And so that was the real crux of the whole conversation we've been grappling with so hard the last couple months.
And that's, I think, where we really, besides where we maybe dive really deep in spreadsheets, maybe there's just a conversation that has to happen there. And Michael, that's kind of why I want you to go through, what does it actually cost to, maintain, right? Whether it's the city or the city, what does it actually cost to maintain segments 3? What is the expected cost to maintain segments 1 and 2? And more importantly, as we continue to learn, what does 4, 5, and 6, and possibly one day 7 and 8 look like? And so the current cooperative agreement, right, this is where we kind of got into some language on that. It's clunky. It was because it was considered at a time, right, where there was massive spending and not a lot of results. So the cooperative agreement was put in place, but if you read the cooperative agreement, it really kind of doesn't consider what it actually takes to make this project come into fruition, right? And so segment 3 was, I think, a really helpful learning phase. But I think we've all learned a ton, even on segment 1 and 2 of design, how to do this properly so we can accelerate 4, 5, 6 and down the road. But the core of it is how can we, we're at whatever percentage plans that are done, we're ready to go soon. But this is like the last thing that we have to decide. And it's not to just get us through segments 1 and 2. It's the longer conversations of no matter who's sitting in these seats, they're not having to deal with decisions made today that were short-sighted. And so we really want to look and think long-term, really long-term, beyond just 1 and 2, to how should this relationship between the city and the CID and all the businesses that are remitting money that maybe aren't seeing the benefit yet because they're scheduled in 2027 or 2028. How do we be fair in all those situations? That's really the crux of the conversation that I think we want to have with this board today. So we can then come to an agreement, and then it's boom, we cut loose. Todd's happy on the funding agreement within the cooperative agreement, we get it passed, and it's get it out to bid. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish. And maybe I should have done this first, I guess, before we dived into maybe some granular numbers. But was that a fair calculation, I think, of the conversation? Solon, do you have anything to add, Chuck? I mean, that's really where the conversation sits today. So we're just trying to give you a really clear picture of, because we're a lot of time in the government, right? Like, it's like we can build it, it's beautiful and it's amazing, but we're also the folks that have to make it look nice and keep it nice. And you want to have fresh pavement, you want to have nice sidewalks, you want to have, it's not just about picking up gum, right? That's the example we always use, and that's great and all, but we really want to keep it looking nice and refreshed. It's like downtown, it looks refreshed right now. How can we maintain that throughout its life cycle before it's time to rip it up and do it again? And so if you could please, Michael, just walk through what it takes to maintain and what's the city's typical role in maintaining versus compared to, a large investment like this.
Sure. So, you have high-end finishes, right? High-end finishes for sidewalks that need to be sealed and cured that are there. The genesis of a great looking project is always just like, with your own businesses, maintaining the asphalt, maintaining the striping. When we put these numbers together, we try to be on the conservative side, right? The city owns a truck, right? A very expensive truck now to paint, which they never had before. But the reality, to spend $2,000 or $3,000 in paint and striping materials, as you all know, owning a business is a drop in the bucket. So those numbers are in there. The other ones that we're learning is I kind of get comfortable into this position is, when you buy these high-end light fixtures and different choices that you've made along the line, they have a lifespan. And we're going through that right now in different areas, not to bring up in this meeting in the city. And what is it to maintain that? And guess what? You own it. The metal halides of the past are over. LED is the only thing that some of the utility groups will do. The cost to power these things, right? You're looking at $40,000 in electricity. You're looking at a lot of water. It's $1,000 a year easily just to maintain the sprinkler system that's up there. By the time you blow it out, even if I sat there for a long time and thought about, well, what if you hire a landscape company? What's that going to cost for them to blow out 27 zones, or what the new future is, right? With that, to maintain that, where here we're putting capital of $1,000 in that's parts, and you're already paying for the person that's there. Street sweeping that's on there, and we're talking about doing big things, right? And if you even look at segment 3 and you look down at the Ferris wheel and you look at the crosswalks, right? some of the ideas that were there didn't work out, right? And that's not that many years ago. So what's your replacement plan on some of those items that are there to take care of that? You're talking about putting in some swings and chairs. And well, what's that cost? The downtown's a great example. A trash can's on $100, right? Those trash cans are very, very expensive trash cans. And it takes to do that, although you guys don't have a whole lot of trash cans and stuff in there, but you do have some seating and you will, unfortunately, you will have some vandalism. And how do you go through that? We replaced the ATV. I don't know if you guys noticed that, we did that through the city budget, right? And so, that with the snow equipment that's on the front to make the sidewalks look better than the streets, and everybody gets to talk about it, right? On Rants and Buzz, because it's stained concrete and it absorbs the light. And you got one person doing 0.33 of a mile to keep our agreement up with you guys, right? And then the snowplow comes by, and if you didn't set those, then guess what? They're there 24 hours a day till the snow gets cleaned up. And so those are just
So that's 0.33 of a mile.
right.
This is
0.33, and this next one's a mile, right?
And what was the cost of the pavement?
True mile. So
0.33.
we didn't break down the payment for that, but what we did is MoDOT was the last one to overlay that. So we went and got their contract and extrapolated that back out and said, hey, if you go from one end to another, and we broke it down, it's almost $2.5 million in today's money. And as you know, today's value of money, you look backwards of the COVID, right? Or you look, what's asphalt going to be this year? That's my real question. If gasoline is going up as quick as it's going up, right? All these contractors that are bidding on it, you may get a solid bid as a business because they know your parking lot, they know what day they will not give that. We'll do an escalation factor. I guarantee it's coming this year, or they'll write it into their contract, or they'll just bid high where we're not there. So, $2.5 million today, we could overlay it in what we know from last year, but we already know that it's going to be higher. So you got to plan for that. And, 7 years on asphalt, we, like I said, we just came from St. Louis, and that's where I'm from. I'm so disappointed in downtown St. Louis and the amount of potholes that are down there. I'm like, literally, I seriously thought I was going to lose a tire like down there. It's crazy. And that's not what you want for people that are, driving 300 miles and a couple hours down here to visit. You want that shiny object that's down there. And Alex did a great job of highlighting of when you refresh something, what you do to continue to maintain it. And your cooperative agreement that you put together long ago, made sure that you had some labor that was there. That labor isn't there. As you see as you get off the highway, we got in cooperation with MoDOT and trimmed up everything that was there that hadn't been done for years. Well, if the city wouldn't have expended that kind of money out along with MoDOT, that wouldn't happen, right? But instead, on these segments, we're trimming rose bushes all the way through. How
many bushes are in segment?
So segment 1 and 2, I looked at the bid documents, and there's 22,000 items for landscaping. Just think about that for a moment. It blew my mind when I looked at the sheet. We can tone this down just a little bit. Granted, some of it's grass, but even if you talk about $10 or $15 a plant, right? Or you talk about somebody coming through there twice a year to drop some fertilizer down and try to pull out some weeds and do that, right? If you were doing that, and you're going to have people that are dedicated to that. Right now, you have 2 people that are dedicated to segment 3, and there's comments out there that those people aren't there all the time. Well, absolutely, because in the winter time, there's other projects they can work on. They can come down, and especially if we're experimenting that way, they can come down and I won't lie, we pick up trash for MoDOT. I don't know who you guys think does 65, but as soon as you get outside of where Branson is, or where I say we're done, all the trash on the highways, that's the type of service you get. Where you're at today, you have somebody that's rolling through there, or there's a phone call away from, hey, by the way, somebody lost the front of their car or jumped a bunch of trash out the side of their car. Please go pick that up today. Hopefully that helps. I mean, I can make gritty numbers, and we're just expanding out. You're talking $200,000 or $300,000 a year today, but you're only doing 0.33 times 2 if you want to do both sides, right? You have 2 people up there because that's a safety factor. We're saying we're adding a mile. I bless if I have employees here that 3 of them are going to do that. We're adding 1 person. So 1.33 mile. And that's all they're getting. And each segment that adds on from this point forward is one. And these were things that were in your original study. It's not something that Matt or I or Ben has spent a few hours dreamed up. These were the true costs that were built there, you know, by CFS in the very beginning that made your line item numbers. So, and we just worked out from there and said, you know, what's reasonable, what's ascertainable, and how long can we do?
And how can we leverage using the CID funds to continue building, moving forward, getting this done? That's the other thing that we really wanted to focus on, because I know it's a priority of the CID board, is continuing to design, continuing to build to get to the end, right? Because we want that too. Because I always think about folks that are in segments 5 and 6, right? They've been paying tax for how many years? We gotta get them results too.
And that's the thing, if you're not, if the reality is we're not getting there in the next 3 years, you're gonna have costs, right? And if you talk about segments 7 and 8 that don't exist now, I challenge all of you as you drive back, look down while you drive. Look at the pavement condition. Matt and I just did this recently, and I'm like, how long are we gonna be able to hold on to this before we'll have to do it? Where's MoDOT's line? When are they coming? When are we gonna match? What are people's perceptions as they pull off the highway? What are their perceptions as they pull in, right? I love downtown. I love what you guys are gonna do. You're gonna do a form of a gateway that's there, right? You roll over this hill now and you're like, hey, what is that down there? I'm gonna go check that out. Maybe I'll stay and spend some money, maybe I won't. And you know, the economic gains is there. And I see, you know, as we went to the state conference, this isn't our original idea. Lots of people are doing this. As you go down to Florida, you look at the islands that are there, and there's people taking trash and doing stuff all the time. There's a real cost to that. And I don't know how they do that, but you go to St. Louis, the islands and things don't look as attractive downtown.
Thanks, Michael. So I guess going back to the 12%, guys, you know, it's just a decision that the board has to make. You know, I think we've come to the table with those numbers, really trying to be conservative with revenue projections and seeing what the SIDS appears to us to be able to afford. And then also, you know, comparing those to our expenses. And so, you know, if the SID board approved that today, then we could be out to bid soon. And this project could get kicked off. I mean, like as in this year, like soon. And Michael could speak more on the timeline there, but you know, it's time. I think it's time. The city wants it. There's people that want it. We're ready to do it. We're so close. And it really boils down to this last decision of just, okay, are you guys okay with the 12%? If so, let's just move forward. Let's get it done.
Second here, I guess. I would not, in my right mind, be able to approve this today without getting the numbers to Paul and Todd, and actually having Todd put his form together to show us what does that mean for the term of this project, right? So we had everything based on what we previously discussed, which I think was expensive, 285,000 a year, whatever that was. I don't remember off the top of my head. And we had the project outlaid over however many years to get phase 2, 1, and then move straight into 4, 5, 6. So I would need, in my opinion, I need Todd to actually put that performance together again for us. And I would ask him to do it based off of what our original request was, which was a 1% increase in tax revenue, as well as your guys' recommendation, the city's recommendation of a 3%, 2% tax revenue. I understand the thought process of last year we were at 3.5%. This year we started down 2.5%. So there's a little bit of concern I have. I think the reason why we were so conservative from the get-go was because of, for example, the current situation that we have in the Middle East. We have a war going on, even though it's not been declared. That is potentially going to increase gas prices. It's going to increase a lot of different things that could very potentially disrupt our tourism market in Branson. We could see a substantial decrease this year because of what's going on. And I'm not a naysayer. I'm conservative. I'm realistic. we've seen situations where we've had conflicts that are beyond our control. And we've seen improvements because of it. We've also seen downturns because of it. Take COVID, for example. We saw a hit with COVID because everybody was shelter in place, all of that. And then as soon as COVID was over, we saw this amazing booming, year or two directly after, where everybody was getting out and about, which was huge. I understand what you're saying. I think all four of us do, or three of us do as well. We all have businesses that we operate and run. We all want them to look the best for our tourism, for our guests that come in, because that's the difference between somebody pulling in and not pulling in. This is the difference between somebody driving to Branson and hitting the strip, or going to Pigeon Forge or going somewhere else. It can make a world of difference. I'm not downgrading anything that you're saying, and I think we had this discussion at the previous meeting. I get it. Yes, we need to be able to contribute some funds to help cover these costs. We need to be able to help out so that we maintain a very high level on this, $80 million plus investment. So completely get and understand it. All I'm saying is I can't in my right mind say, yes, I approve this today without having Paul and Todd dig into it a little bit.
And I think that's fair. I think that's fair, Chuck. I wouldn't disagree with you. We want to probably recrunch the numbers and make sure that the bonding and stuff like that checks out. I just want to remind everyone that when we did that last time, and Chuck, you referenced the 1% growth rate. I talked to some consultants, some people in the bonding industry, and 1% is extremely low and out of the norm. 3% is still considered conservative. So I just don't think it's really fair and represents things. I get that there's fluctuations, right? And everyone saw that, right, with COVID. Like you said, it was bad the one year, but good the next year. And that's why averages and industry standards kind of help balance that out, because those industry standards reflect, kind of historical things, and they account for that uncertainty. This isn't the first war the United States have ever, confronted, right? And so that's built into the industry knowledge and whatnot. And so knowing that the industry has a conservative amount at 3% for a growth rate still, I think, is fair. Now, if we want to meet in the middle, I guess, and say, let's project the numbers at 2%, like we all know, if you look at our average, we're still going to be really good.
Yeah, so and maybe you couldn't hear this, but that's the numbers that Allison ran was 2%. I know we had all talked internally about using that 3% industry standard number. We thought, let's squeak it back a little closer to what Chuck and Paul had presented.
Right, but Chuck was just saying a second ago that he was going to have Todd do 1%. I just don't think that's going to work. That's skewing the revenue way too far down. That's like not just conservative. That's like ultra way kind of in the industry's mind unreasonably conservative.
So there is, in these spreadsheets, there is still showing a net surplus per year, even with all of these costs and all of the expenditures. Every year we came in at a surplus with that 2% projection. I know your bonds are based on a 1% projection, and that's great, right? Because then you're not going to overbond anything that you can't pay for, and you don't want to over project your bond payment, because what if you only do have a 1% growth rate? So you don't want to go to 3% on your bond projections, over bond and not pay your bond payment. So I understand where you're coming from on your bond. You don't want to project more than 1% on your bond when you go to do that. That's great, and that's what we have built in here is your debt service payments based on the 1% growth rate. So that's why I did a 2% to say, hey, even on a 2% growth rate, which you will have on average, because that's what we've shown the last 5 years, we're still showing a net surplus. We're not even dipping into your reserve funds. So that's why I didn't want to go to 3% and say, yeah, you have $3 million per year surplus. We want to be conservative with that, because even at a 2% growth rate, we're still showing a surplus annually with all of these expenditures.
And I understand that maybe I didn't. I just want to see what the numbers look like at our 1%, but I also want Todd to show them at 3%, which is what the original recommendation was. I mean, you're talking about it's an Excel sheet. It's a change in a 1 to a 3 in the document. It's right.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yep.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I would be curious too.
I'm just curious. I'd like to see the benefit of that, and just kind of, because even if you go to 1% and it moves our bond rating down to 1.2, and time. And we're still able to cover these costs, then I would rather project it 1%.
Okay, I'm looking
Yeah.
at. So I'm looking at this from a different point of view. We're sitting here discussing the differences between a 1% and a 2% growth.
I understood. Well, I understand that's what the projection are, but I would like to see it for 3%. Is that's what that was.
And my point is, this has been going on a long time. I mean, a long time. I've been out of pocket for 8 months. The last meeting I attended, we had our last easement approved
Last fall.
last fall. And all that had to be done, my understanding, was we just need to agree on this maintenance cost and move forward. That's all we had to do. And we're sitting here today still talking about what that maintenance fee is gonna be. And these things aren't in stone. Chuck, to your point, if we had a COVID, if we had a war, if we had a whatever affect our economy, this board can get back together and say, you know what, we need to make some adjustments. Instead of trying to prepare for every possible situation that could possibly come up. I say it's time to shit or get off the pot. This thing has been taken years and years and years. And the public has almost forgotten about it. The few that bring it up to me, they're just scratching their head. Are we still doing this? It's amazing. Think about how many years we talked about doing this. Years. These numbers weren't just thrown up, right? They put a lot of time into digesting these numbers. We won't even be using these numbers until we have a year of construction. So these numbers don't even take place until middle of 27. That's a year from now. In a year from now, if these numbers are off, I feel confident this board will say, you know what, those numbers are off, let's readjust. And I think the board would reasonably say, well, that makes sense. Income is so much greater. Expenses are so much greater. Whatever happens, one thing I'm confident, these numbers will not be in place for the next 20 years. Right? But I think that'd be unreasonable to expect.
No, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I do. And I know that we have been working on this for quite some time. I get that. I think there's a little bit of, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm to blame or the city's to blame, because that's pointless.
Yeah.
It's pointless to play a blanket. I agree with you. I'm glad we have an idea of where we're at or what the city is recommending for us. But I still need Todd to put this together so that I can make an educated decision on my side, my education on what it looks like for bonding this project for the future. Because like I said, the existing bonding does not show roughly $700,000 in operating costs. It shows $275,000. So that's going to throw the bonding number from 1.29 to 1.36 down to what? And Todd has basically said, we got to keep our bonding rating at what? Paul, can you confirm what Todd said?
Like 124, 125 or something like that.
Well, it's a 125 coverage ratio.
Right, so if we do this and we're looking at a coverage ratio below that 1.25, what does that do for the chance of us being able to bond this project? That's what I'm concerned about. And then what does it look like from an outlay of how long the project's gonna take?
If it's not going, we don't need a bond. We'll have so much cash to just pay cash for this thing.
Well, and one of the references that we have shows that if we bond the first two segments, we could potentially pay cash for segment 4.
Okay. We've generated $5.8 million over last year talking about this.
Well, it wasn't just talking about this, it was also spending, Sullivan spending and Kathy spending accountant salaries trying to get that last easement. Like, that was a big part of that.
That was.
And
So I'm not blaming anybody, because an armchair quarterback would say, well, why weren't we working on this agreement when we were waiting for the easements, right? So things happen that take the time. It's just, I was disappointed when I came back, and I really thought we would have had the bonding done and out to bid. And to find out we're still talking about these percentages just blows my mind.
Well, and I understand that, and I will say that Paul and I met with Kathy and Alex and Sullivan on late October. And they basically brought this information up. We had the discussion about how, what kind of number are we looking at from an operating cost? That was my question when we left. Where are we looking at from an operating cost? Please tell me that. This is the first I've heard of what that number is.
Okay, and that's been 5 months.
Correct.
And I was taking the position of this will never be exact. It's either going to be high or it's going to be low.
Understood.
Or it's going to be within a tolerable range, or it's going to be out of the range that needs to be adjusted.
Agreed. And I agree with you that this board has the ability to make that adjustment if the time comes that it needs to make that adjustment. It's no different than any business. I understand that. I just need to see that formula from top.
And so on that, Chuck, so during that 5 months, lest anyone think that there wasn't things going on, because there was. And part of that was, having those meetings and discussing some of the other things that we've worked out so the cooperative agreement has more than just this number. And we've all, Paul, me, Chuck, Kathy, Alex, all the people here, we've worked out all those other details. And so when you're talking about a multi-point, contract negotiation, that stuff happened. So during that 5 month period, that stuff was going on. Now, I'll also tell you during that 5 month period, we had been given that growth model, the projection rate, and we needed to appreciate the SID's position, but then also go to the drawing board and see if that was reasonable. And so as we looked into the bonding and what, to keep that 125 ratio there, if you do go up to 2%, that dramatically changes how much money you have to have here and there, or you'll have left over for the bonding. So we didn't have that data back then. We got that in that 5 month period, and now we have it. And so if we don't change that 1% to 2%, it's going to make it look like we can't afford to bond. And so that's
Okay.
why I'm saying it has to move to 2%.
Understand all that. Again, that's been 5 months. I understand what your position is, and I'd make a recommendation to take a vote on this.
You're calling it to question, we can definitely do that.
I'd like to do that.
Is there any further discussion regarding this stuff?
So I have a couple questions, I guess, just so I can clear it up in my head. I'm looking at spreadsheet numbers on there. Here, 12%, which is what, $650,000-ish. Obviously costs will change, things will change. This isn't presented as a hard 12% by contractuals at 5% or whatnot, right? This is an up to 12% type of will approve. A street sweeper was on the spreadsheet. That would be something brought forth. Hey, are we willing to buy this now? Do we have the funds to do this now? Is that how that's laid out, or is this
It was laid out as 12 off the top, and I'll tell you why. So there are going to be years where it's more expensive later, and or it's maybe the inverse of that, but it wasn't going to be consistent, because once we get all the phases done, it's once we get all the phases done, it's going to be more expensive. And so to balance that cost out, we just said, let's keep it flat in a collection because, in 5 or 6 years, 12% is probably not going to be sufficient. So rather than coming back to the drawing board and asking for more, we just said, hey, we have done an average here and we think 12% will allow the city to maintain it well throughout the project. So it wasn't an up to amount. The idea and the intention, which I think for the motion would be that it's a flat 12% paid to the city for maintenance and repairs and stuff like that.
In that same vein, then the vacuum, the street sweeper, the mill and overlay, was that tied to the mill and overlay, for example, 1.5 million some dollars, right?
2.5.
What is that? The entire coverage of this CID?
Yeah, it's the entire coverage of that. Like you got to be saving at some point for the future, right? And of course, when plus MoDOT, when MoDOT gave this land over, right? This has come up in meetings before where they gave us a little bit of money. I can tell you that was a good deal for them. That was state maintenance. But I would have made that deal in a heartbeat. I would have been on the state side to you guys. And so like you can bring up a street sweeper or wherever, but we thought about all the items that are used, right? You're using a street sweeper today that serves the city, right? And the one we had two, that one's gone, the new one's coming in. We're not in there asking for that at some point. It's how do you charge for the use? Do you charge for the hour? Do you not? And where are you at that? We talked about, yearly touch up of striping. Well, that doesn't include those really neat turn arrows that are in the middle. That today's cost is $178 raw cost plus putting them down. So you're looking at, you go up and down. There's a lot of those, right? And so, I didn't like. I said, hey, here it is, right? It fluctuates on the page. Some years it's 472,000. Some years it's $1 million, right? Because you're saving and spending and saving and spending and. By drawing that 12%, putting it in there, I don't want to outspeak. I think that be honest with you each year. Here's what we spent. Here's what's left over. We're carrying it for this, and this is where it's going. And it doesn't matter if I'm sitting in the seat or somebody else. That's what you guys should be asking for. My biggest concern was, hey, can you account for every hour of people that are up there and what they did? Our capability previous to me. Probably not, right? And but that's part of that's management, right? And so or work order system that you can track these things and that's where we're headed. And so, but the important conversation that the 12% is variable. I don't know if how you want to help me walk through that or whatever. I threw it out there, but. That's what it is, or you're going to run into an instance like we're having today in a different part of the city where you have light poles that they bought and now we can't replace. That is a reality, and what I consider probably the easiest fix in the world is I go to a utility company, I say take down the poles because I don't have the equipment, put them back up, and charge me for them. Dude, that sounds real easy sitting here. I started that in October and I still don't have an agreement today. And that's the same people and the same utility companies, and you have two of them up there that you're dealing with. And so that's important things that we're learning along that helps. I don't want to over talk because it's a savings. It's a savings account. And
Michael, I just want to clarify something Michael said. He used the word variable earlier when he was talking about the 12%. Well, I think he was saying, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, is you didn't mean the 12% would be a variable, but the expenses that the 12% paid for would vary from year.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's on the record and clear for future purposes.
Right. Because like a great, for instance, is a sprinkler system, right? We're learning this. I hate saying projects on the record, but downtown a different phase than that we just finished. It's at the end of its life. Like
It's unfortunate, sprinkler systems don't last forever, and you're like, oh, what's a sprinkler system? Cost, well, controllers, $1,000, $2,000 installed, done right. Right, and it's 2-wire system, it's a little bit different system, or, you based on what you guys choose and the maintenance that are there, what's a fountain maintenance cost, right? We're taking our best guess off of what, man, that was the worst one. I just realized that as soon as that slipped out, I'll tell you.
This is, I think for me, because, we still don't know what that number is. Jeremy knows what that number is. Maybe somebody else in this room knows what that number is to.
You think Jeremy knows the maintenance cost?
No, to construct the phase 1 and 2. She's got some idea of what that is, and that cost is also increasing. And so what we're asking is, yes, maintenance is going to be there, maintenance is going to continue to increase, but so is infrastructure, so is construction, so is everything else. And so not knowing that number could be a great number for us all. We're like, okay, this is great. That number could be not so great. We don't know that yet. And to be asked to vote on spending money that we don't know, some of the outcomes on is a difficult ask in my opinion. Just respect.
Is it possible, so if we did project, done right, if we're 12% of maintenance, how much of the available for bonding, how much? Because I'll give a
Cheryl doesn't have this one, but yeah, I did it on bonding, right? So I did your 1% bond and I did that payment. I put that into our 5-year forecast and then I put all of your current costs on your cooperative agreement and then I put maintenance costs on there. And then we had a surplus per year. So that was taking everything into account, like you're asking for, Chuck, like, do we still have the revenue there? Do we still have everything there? Yes, you do, because you're still making surplus based on that 2% revenue that's projecting and your bond payment that's in there. I'll share this with Cheryl so she can pull it up. But as well as I rolled it up per year. And so we're asking for 12%. On average, we come in at around 15%. In 2027, costs are going to be around 33.5%, and we're asking for 12%. So we didn't ask for more than we needed. We're asking for less to come to an agreement. Like, hey, we're still covering some costs because it's costing us way more than 12% to make things.
And I understand that it's gonna cost way more than the 12%. Like, we all run business, like I said, we all run businesses, we all know what it costs to maintain things, I know what it costs to redo my parking lot. I know what it's gonna cost to do 76. I get that, and I knew that there was already gonna be a shared scenario here with the city when it came to the maintenance. There was never a question in my mind that. My biggest thing is I wanna see that bond rating from Todd, because I want Todd to be able to show me that, yes, we're still at 1.25, we're gonna have no problem staying bond. That's the only thing that I'm waiting. I don't have, honestly, if we can bond at 1.25 at 12%, that's right. Give it that. I just want to see that from Todd.
We're back together in 13 days. Can they put this together for us and look at the next meeting?
I'm sure they could. Paul, do you think Todd could get that to us by the end of the month?
We can have, I'll ask him. I just need all the spreadsheets from the city and I will pass those on to Todd. I don't know what his schedule's like, but I'm sure he'll endeavor to do it.
He's gonna look at it from.
So we got them. So.
Well, let me ask you this, Paul, does he really need the spreadsheets, or can you just say that 12% of the tax revenue and 2% increase year over year? That should all be all Todd needs. You shouldn't need to get them all spreadsheets.
That's what I would think. I agree, Chuck.
Chuck, I think
Check your
that was, you just said you had this combination.
Yeah, so I did it with 2% revenue increase per year and then your 1% that your bond was projecting. So I took your bond payment that your bond was projecting, typed that in there, typed in all of our expenditures and our capital, and then.
And you put in the debt coverage ratio?
Yeah, no, I did not put in the debt coverage ratio on the bottom, but we can take that because we have our surplus per year. So even if we are doing 1%, we still have a surplus, so it will cover that debt ratio that they were already projecting.
Allison, are you doing the 12% prior to calculating net revenue available for debt service?
No, I am unsure what you're talking about, Paul. I did took our current expenditures and all of that and rolled those up and then took a 2% revenue increase and then did your bond payment that were in your guys' schedules of your 1% bonds.
I think, Allison, what he's asking is the surplus that you have in your projections. is that after we take out the 12% payment to the city?
Yes, that is all cost.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you
so
would
the
still have a surplus even with paying the city 12%.
In this current projection, it's actually more than that. I projected all city costs in this projection and we're only asking for 12%. So these
yeah, so that actually is not what I was asking. The debt service
apologies.
the debt service coverage ratio is calculated based upon net revenues available. So when you have sales tax revenue in and then your interest income, we did have the 2% and whatnot as expenses, and then that generates your net revenue available for debt service. That's then the number that they're looking at with regard to the principal and interest on the bonds to show your total net debt service, and then that generates your debt service coverage ratio. What we'd asked Todd to do when we met twice last fall with Kathy and Solon was to add columns to his scenarios to show the net revenue remaining after debt service. We had another column for capital expenditures because the last time we talked, segment 4 was going to be paid out of cash on hand, and that was estimated at 22 million. And keep in mind that the last time we talked to Todd, he didn't think that the bonding capacity would cover all segments 1 through 6. And so there was going to have to be a little bit of cash used for segment 6. So then once you take out those capital expenditures, including $2 million for engineering fees, then you get to the far right column, which was estimated available cash. And it was this estimated available cash where the maintenance expenses were going to be drawn from. But if you take the 12%, as Solon said, off the top, you very well may be damaging your debt service coverage ratio. But that's why
Sorry, Paul.
that's why, I mean, it's some of it may just seem under the hood, semantic stuff, but if it, depending upon how the scenario in these tables are structured, we can say, oh yeah, let's do this or that. Keep in mind, this is going to go under, Todd will run the scenarios to show you, and then it's going to be given to the bond underwriter. But first we've got to go through the credit rating process. They're going to put these numbers under a full body cavity search. And then ultimately Baird's got to go out and sell the bonds based upon these numbers. So so it really does, I think, warrant some input from your financial folks just to make sure that it'll work.
Okay, so Chuck, I'm moving my request for the vote. My recommendations would be, let's get this information to Todd. We're meeting in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So at our next meeting, let's all be prepared to move forward.
Great. Yes, sir. That's up. Sweet.
Allison, could I ask you, if you, it looks like from that workbook, you've got a lot of spreadsheets there, but can you send the one that shows your projections of covering the debt service or the debt payments? Can you just send us that one?
Well, all of our debt services are down here. So this is 26 because we didn't know what we were bonding, and then 27 goes into real debt payments and what the debt schedules were. But yes, I can send this over to you so you have everything. And you have projecting. In these individual workbooks, it's actually broken down with all city costs. And then we're only asking for 12% of that. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind, that our operating year is going to show more than that 12% that we're asking for.
Yeah. So for example, in the latest bond scenario that we'd gotten from Todd, this was contemplated, of course, that the bonds would have been issued probably late last year. But he was showing the projected 2026 net debt service at 2.4 million. So if you're at You're probably pretty close there at 2 point. Looks like you are at 2.4, so that may match up. But this is just sort of the check you want to run with your FA, who you're paying money for. You might as well use him.
So can I make two comments on that, Paul? Thank you for that, and I agree with you with what you said about that. Two things that are very important that I don't want us to come back the next time and have these doubts left over and they didn't get brought up. And that is, one, make sure that Todd does projections at a growth rate of 1, which is what you guys did last time, because you guys want to have that number, but also at least a 2% projection for growth on the revenue. And then also it would be, I think, wise for the board to be able to see a non-cash paid fourth phase model where the $20 million sitting in the account is used to pay debt service over time to enhance the bonding capacity of the SID rather than just paying cash for one. Because that's a scenario, like, of course, if you throw all of your cash into one, it's going to be more difficult to have good bond stuff later when you have zero money left. But if you leverage that cash slowly over the payments, the 20 million, let's say if it's a 20-year project, you can pay $1 million of the 20 million towards debt service each year. And now instead of $2 million for debt service, you have an extra million on top of that. So now you have 3, so you can actually bond more. So I would like to see a scenario where we have a 2% growth projection on the revenue and a scenario that he puts together where instead of paying cash for that project, we use the $20 million that's sitting there to help leverage more bonds, because maybe we can do the whole thing faster if we do it that way.
So I will ask him, I'll just ask him for 1, 2, and 3%. There's been a lot of discussion. As Chuck noted earlier, it's just a digit change in some formula, so it's no big deal. And then the board can interpret that data however it wants. And then on your second point, Solon, you might recall when we met twice last fall, we had assumed segment 4 would be paid cash on hand. You're just wanting to see that if it were to be bonded in lieu of cash on hand?
Yeah, and then what we could do with that $20 million to service the debt on the other bonds that we have, and how that would shake everything up to allow us to maybe not be so worried about the ratio, because now that $20 million is going towards contributing to that.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep.
Paul, we have that, because Todd actually did that for us as well prior to us, back in August.
But not with the 2% and the 3%, just with the
No,
1%.
no, he did with the 1%. So
Okay.
I agree with you, Solon, completely, that we need to get that as well.
Yeah, let's take a look at it and see what we think.
So, Paul, here's what I understand you're gonna do for Todd. You're gonna get him to take the 12% off the top line of the tax revenue plus interest. And
Well,
then you're going to
we're going to ask Todd to show that after net revenue remaining after debt service and any projected capital expenditures, subject to what Solon and I just talked about on phase 4, that leaves estimated available cash. And then the question to be answered with that column is, within that estimated available cash, can it support a 12% maintenance load?
Well, the problem with that, if you don't take it off the top first, Paul, the thing you're going to run into is then when you do more bonds, then the 12% is never going to be able to be serviced, because,
And so what I'll ask Todd to do, just for demonstration purposes, because I'm not a finance guy, I will ask him to run, taking it before net revenue available for debt service is calculated. Just keep in mind, when you push down that net revenue available for debt service, you impinge upon your debt service coverage ratio. And if you don't get 125, you're not selling bonds.
I know, and that's why I think that it's important to move the 1 to 2%, because that will also change the ratio back the other direction. Yeah. Maybe not sufficiently, but we don't know. We just need to see what those numbers do when
Yeah,
they get
well,
moved.
That's why they're called scenarios, and
Yep.
that's why there'll be multiple spreadsheets to go
Okay.
through.
Sounds good.
I hate to throw in another scenario, but as we look at this, the variable is gonna end up being, how much can we bond? Right, because we're gonna go with certain revenue income, we're gonna go with here are our expenses. What's left over? Apply the 1.25. How much does that allow us to bond? And if that amount is short of what our cost estimates are, we're sitting on $20 million. Right, nothing says we can't apply $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million to cover that.
And that's the scenario I was telling him to run, Mayor, is using the $20 million cash towards, payments along the way. So he's going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind, we do have to keep a reserve, and they said that the reserve needs to be at the minimum 1 year's tax revenue.
So $5 million.
Well, it's 5.5, 6 million, I guess, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Which we have plenty of right now.
My guess is, Mayor, you will have to use some cash on hand because the bonding capacity based upon this revenue stream, though it's very, very healthy, may not be sufficient to support bonds for up through phase 6, which is, but the CID, as everybody knows, has been accumulating cash. So to your point, Mayor, it may well need to be use cash either in an augmentative or or just in full, but those will be the scenarios.
Yeah, and the other thing that no one's mentioned, but I think we all know, I mean, it's common sense, is that the idea of spending this money is that it will increase the revenues. So while we're projecting 1%, 2%, 3%, but the actual has been around 5, I think. I mean, we can all hopefully agree that this is supposed to make those revenue projection percentages go up even further, because that's the whole point of us doing this, right? So, I mean, no one's taking that into account, and I know that's the conservative way to do that, and I'm fine with that. But let's also keep in mind that we're doing this the very conservative way, and we shouldn't be surprised if we're actually having more money in revenue than we actually think, because we're supposed to be making more revenue by spending this money.
If we're not, why are we doing it?
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
Paul, can you just double check that thought process? The way I just pulled up one of Todd's documents, the way I see the document, sales tax revenue plus the interest income minus expenses, and that leaves us the net revenue available for debt services.
That's part of the scenario. That's like the first 4 columns from left to right.
Correct. So the question is, if it's an expense, why wouldn't that 12% be in that expense column?
It could, but keep in mind the debt service coverage ratio is based upon that column titled net revenue available for debt service. So you want that number as high as possible.
I understand that. That's the number you want higher to give you your 1.25 or higher.
Right.
25 or higher.
Right.
And back in where it says net revenue remaining, that's where you're talking about. But I guess we're gonna have to talk to Todd regarding the cooperative agreement and everything associated. If the city wants that 12%, and it's in the cooperative agreement, but we're not showing it on the expense side, wouldn't that be a questionable?
Yeah, Solon and Sarah, is it Sarah at Gilmore? Solon, I forgot her name.
Sarah.
I think you two had conversations about the waterfall. But again, I think, we'll just have Todd run the numbers. It may well be if you bump it up to 2%, maybe you can still meet the coverage ratio. It's just data. It's objective. So you're either going to meet it, taking it off the top, or you're not. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
And
let me see if we can, not to cut you off, Solon, but I think.
no, you're fine.
Pretty strongly. I think we know what we're looking for now. I think everybody's in an understanding. And Paul, if I need to get with Todd as well and try to expedite this, I think it would be very beneficial to get these numbers, get them in and get them to the entire board at least a couple of days prior to the meeting. Yes. Because I think for everybody to be able to digest this stuff, we can come in with an actual informed, educated understanding. So let's do what we can to push Todd on this, okay? I'll push him as well.
Will do.
Any further discussion regarding the cooperative agreement? The only other comment I had, Solon, you said that you had a red line for the cooperative. Did you get that to Paul to review so that we're not waiting for that after you agree with this?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. That'd be great, because that will also help expedite. Paul can be working on that.
Now, yeah, and Paul, just so everyone knows, I think it was mutually understood that no one really liked the way the old one was written. So the red line we have is a totally new cooperative agreement. It's not going to look the same and be structured the same as the old one.
That's what we.
Yeah,
And the
just
hope
send
is
me.
that it will be more readable.
Yeah, just send me whatever you have. So I've not seen it yet. So if you've got something, even if
Okay.
it's preliminary, please
Yeah,
send it.
I'll send it, and I'm totally open to red lines from you, Paul.
Looks like we got marching orders and where we're moving forward to. Is there any further discussion regarding the cooperative agreement? Anybody? No? Okay, anybody have anything else for the good of the cause? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank you, Chuck and Paul, and the conversations that we've been able to have on this. And I think they've yielded very good fruit. And it really forced us to dig deep and to really look very critically at, what's a shared and balanced agreement going forward for the future city long after we're all gone. I always say when I'm sitting in my wheelchair, saying, but I will be sipping Ensure out of a straw, one day, being able to look fondly at how beautiful it is.
I'm there.
First by then, but so I just want to express my appreciation for that. I think we're really making great progress now, and I just want to further emphasize the commitment that the city has on getting this done, and we're just itching to get started. So thank you for that.
I think we all are, and thank you for that as well. Appreciate it, and same to you guys. If there's nothing else.
I know there's a bunch of available funding that has deadline and all that stuff, are we still keeping up with all this deadline things that are available?
Right.
Have you missed anything? Because we are, we're still at pause in some area.
Right, you're in decent shape, as I highlighted in the beginning, but having an action plan by May, April, but like April, that they have to see movement they're asking for movement from us because they will have to update the governor and for the fiscal year.
When you say movement, is that mean an actual travel?
Yeah, no, they want to see the bid out.
Okay.
The bid,
Okay.
right, bid it.
We're
by
saying
that
by
time.
April.
Yeah, April.
April is next month.
Yeah.
They want to see or movement that's here, so,
Can't happen.
right, so.
It's not.
So that then we pass it and they don't, that would be a bigger conversation.
Well, we can report out that it's gone out to bid.
Right, that it's gone.
We just say we're.
Not truly bid, but it's going to bid, when you have bid documents out and reported. And so all that does is protect you from the taking, right? And so the governor's money with the state here, they still can come back. And of course, you do, people that did a great job of getting that money allocated could go back, but just so you know, that's on the table, and they asked for us monthly updates. And I said, hey, matter of fact, we're meeting and it's going forward, and the final stuff is there. And so we need to finish building it out as soon as you guys know.
What needs to happen for the bid documents to be ranked?
So a true timeline, like how long the bonding to the money, you could always write the construction contract that it could only go to this point like it could go to notice to proceed, but we'll give you the date when the bonding money is there or whatever you're comfortable with. If you have a little bit of cash that you want to get it up and started and let mobilization, and then it pauses, you can write that in the contract, but you have to have an overall understanding of the timeline that's there. And then that shifts everything, right? So we said 1 year from the point of letting it out is when they're done. And then you also have to make that decision of how you want to adjust the bonus structure that we had built in there. You know, the original idea was you start in January, you gave the bonus, they're done 2 months before Christmas time, when we know it's very good for the city of Branson. And now you slowly push that and you're going to wrap around that side. So do you still want to bonus that far? And if you threw enough money, could you bonus the other way? I don't think so now. You're half of it. You should have been by now. So
I guess my question is, you're talking about bidding, but my understanding is what exactly do you have to provide to MoDOT? And so because you're saying about bidding, my understanding is we can't bid anything until it's bonded. Right, as a municipality.
as a municipality, you can put it out as long as your contract says it pauses at this point. Like you don't have the cash to this or until the funding is in to allow your bidding process and to get a contractor in place. The contractors know the risk up front and they can stay there. Now, the TAP agreements that are separate of this that are tied to the major contract have very specific requirements, and that is what your match is. So their money coming back, right? That's your sidewalks that are on top after all this. And that's why we did that. So you have your match and we're just sitting and they're just waiting. But you don't want any of those pieces of funding to fall apart while you're trying to get the very last piece. And we did a great job yesterday of presenting that to 623 probably MoDOT people. So like they know where we are, and it was said we're meeting today. We're excited for where it's going. We're getting bonding in place so we can all move forward together. And so hopefully, again, that goes up the ladder to the state representatives that we're doing the right thing. And then our monthly meeting, of course, will say by the time we have our next monthly meeting, we'll be sitting back here and saying we're bonding. So we're out to bond council.
Where's Jeremy?
So
let's and I'm not trying to belabor this meeting. No, it's totally fine. Unless everybody wants, I just want to know where she's at on construction drawings. She 100%.
Okay, so
ready to put it out the bid.
I would have supposed that you all knew, but apparently did. Jeremy Jackson left Great River Engineering and went out to do her own thing. Met with the principal there, and they have moved some people around. And so Mike Beatty, of course, you met Mike Beatty that came in here, kind of the brains behind the structure, right? And Jeremy was the beautiful in the landscape. And so those plans are all there. Mike Beatty actually had a gallbladder that exploded in his body earlier this week. So we flexed a little bit. Todd Chandler came up to present with me, also with Austin. So they did a great job and everything was smooth. Todd Chandler has been told by the company to continue moving this forward. Of course, your plans are done and sealed by Jeremy Jackson. She sealed them before she did leave the company along with Mike Beatty. So they're locked in and sealed. But of course, we can open them up and finish up JSPs. JSPs are job special provisions, which we kind of talked about. And those are the pieces that are going to take 15 or 20 days when we know exactly how everything's going to work out to write things correctly and make sure. We still do need MoDOT's final blessing on everything. And they got the very last parts that they needed. We went to the board because they had mishap with FHA federal highway numbers not matching correctly. So Solon helped us and Cheryl, and we got it all the way back to the board and double read it to get it all the way back to them. And all those items are signed. So that locked the TAP funding back in. So just don't want to lose that as the update. With Jeremy Jackson and Great River Engineering.
So plans would be ready to go out to bid.
They would very good.
That's the
Very
version.
quickly. Like it used to be 60.
Happy.
Yeah, there you go. So
What's the bullet?
All it needs-
30 days is probably pretty reasonable. 30, maybe 45. You know, we definitely have to have MoDOT stuff. So You can start as soon as you bid and you want to do it, you have the bonding. So if you're writing your JSP, so you're waiting for the bonding money, you can go.
Michael, this is Paul.
But the reality. Yep.
In light of, I didn't know Jeremy had left. Does the city intend to continue with Great River? Or are you guys going to go back out on an RFQ for phase 4 through 6?
Yeah, so 4 through 6, of course, I thought that would, even if Great River Engineering was out there, you would still want to go out for requests for qualifications, because you don't know where somebody else is out there, or somebody has ended up with talent that's different that you would like, or different ideas. Also, I would think we would want to let these plans take off just a little bit to make sure that they're solid, and talk about how happy we are with the ones that are there. But yes, definitely, my suggestion from the city to the boards, of course, there's multiple boards that are here, is that, you put it back out and see what's out there, because other design firms sure would love the opportunity. You could always write things in that, we like this motif, maybe, as we call it, or the ribbon, or the style that's there, please continue the style. Very similar to what we did with the intersection. So.
Nobody here is dissatisfied or would want us to go out to someone else, would you?
No.
I wouldn't imagine, right? We're already married to.
Well, it's not that, it's also timing.
Well, right now, for like 1 and 2, we finished the contract, other than tasks 7 and 8. They still have that piece to do, which is during construction, which is part of your original contract that's there. But your design documents, what you paid for, you have already. Now, the additional services, that's anybody's game right now. You decide to do construction services or third-party integrator that we talked about and did at one time. Those are the options that you're working through there going forward.
The only comment I will make is Todd Chandler being part of it now, which he was not before, could be to our benefit because he was part of phase 3. So he knows every aspect of phase 3.
So when the guy sleeps.
Yeah, because
He's on-
He doesn't, we spent 2 days with him, and literally, I came in at 5:30 in the morning and sitting there typing on his computer, and we started working, and I went home, and they took a little bit of downtime, and I come back in the morning and I'm like, I got these guys beat this morning, I'm gonna work. And it's wonderful. And the scenes are in many of the greatest projects, from a city perspective, and I don't want to speak for Alex and Kathy, but I was a 100% happy client with how downtown went. And Jeremy was involved in that on the landscape side, which is already done on your project, and Todd handled the construction side with us, and the services that we were provided. I was very happy. And him being local, where Miss Jackson, although she left, was in St. Louis, was invaluable to me. Like, there is no lie. If you heard that, I was down there morning, night, and I was there a lot. And Todd would show up.
Yeah.
Todd hated me, but he would show up. We got one more night one to do, and everything's done.
Well, I think with Todd, he's good, because he's doing the Brents Meadow. He's just responsible for, River's responsible for all the development, I know that they have a big team, but I know he's a big boy, but also, I mean, it's already stamped for Jeremy.
Correct.
So it's not like, it's already ready to go. And with, especially missing any kind of deadline with funding, all that stuff, you don't want to risk that. There's no way you want to do that. It's time, it's like you say, it's time to move on. We try to figure out what you do. I think, and Todd is, he's got a good team. It's not just Todd.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch of guys that work for him that essentially qualify.
He's a stand-up construction administrator, contracts guy, and hats off to Jeremy. Like, her landscape and vision for this stuff that's led you as far as you are, like, super creative. And even Todd, when we were presenting, said, man, I'm a numbers guy, a contracts guy, a constructability guy, but this beautiful stuff that's here is not my credit, right? It's true. Send in front of everyone. So bless her and hope to see her again at some point. So.
I think the biggest message now, question is we don't want to miss any kind of opportunity. If there's some funding that has been granted to us or anything that has been, and because we're doing our, I just, you need to let us know.
Yep.
Is
It's a
it?
lot of work to get that done, so I don't wanna lose any.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of money, and there's a lot of money.
And if I feel a sense from any of the boards outside, but being MoDOT is the administrator of those funds, that there's no I definitely will reach out to the board that's here and the people that went up and talked to our governor and made those things happen, because I sure hope it's there, but with shorter funding, we all understand, it's just like we talked about here, maybe you don't spend that money this year, maybe it's more important somewhere here, and our project is super important for the state of Missouri and for the show's visitors and business members and our community.
And I will let you know that after we met with Great River, Todd's team, they've contacted me almost every day, so I'm in constant contact with her.
It is here anyways, it's got an office here.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right, do we have anything else
Thanks for the update, by the way.
You're welcome.
anything else that anybody would like to discuss?
Thank you, guys.
Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, stated by getting up.
Aye.
How you doing? I haven't seen you for a while. I know. No, I'm not here.
It's
That's actually 25th, so back from Wednesday, last Wednesday.